There has not been a graduation held amidst such disruption as we face today since 1968. Pardon me. There is, of course, the pandemic that is wreaking havoc with the health and well-being of billions. And more recently, we have seen violence against people of color and the outbreak of protest, yet another manifestation of the country's festering legacy of racism, its continuing failure to realize the vision of an inclusive nation that Martin Luther King gave voice to 50 years ago. And all of this is unfolding as social and political fissures and the weakness of our national political leadership hobble efforts to respond effectively. That we are meeting today virtually is, of course, a function of the pandemic. And in the wake of the violence that followed Sunday's demonstrations in Boston, we were wondering on Monday whether the distribution of diplomas at the school would be safe. I'm glad to say that it is. This is a graduation, so it is important, especially now, to say that we need you graduates in the years ahead as scientists. We need you as advocates for justice. We need a generation with the skills and the will to lead our communities and country effectively. Commonwealth's founder, Charles Merrill, informed by Dr. King's vision, whom he knew and supported, he started the school to ready young people for just such work. But we also need you to take other lessons away, lessons we hope you've learned with us. Take them out into the wider world. The Greek pre-Socratic philosopher Empedocles said that the world is a mixture of elements, earth, water, fire, and air, alternately drawn together and pushed apart by the forces of love and strife. Greek thinkers had a marvelous way of describing in the same language worlds we moderns separate into the physical and the moral. Heraclitus, for instance, said that the sun's straying from its course would be an act of injustice. The Greeks also had a view of human emotions, such as rage, envy, love, as divine forces that blow through human lives like the changing weather. Insult a leader, and he may be blinded by folly, ate in Greek. Glance at the person next to you, and you could be overtaken, possessed by eros, love. These forces are ever present in the atmosphere, as it were, and they are capricious. They can disrupt or heal. They can spread like a virus. That view is a useful lens through which we might consider our current predicaments. Today, the contagion of strife is let loose and spreads, helped by modern accelerants. Those of you who joined me last month in reading Stand Out of Our Light by James Williams, the former award-winning Google strategist, we read of the ways that the incentives of the online economy lead to designs that hijack our attention, our autonomy, and even our politics. I quote, "Mob rule," he writes, "is hard-coded into the design of the attention economy. In this way, it can be considered a kind of society-wide utility function that optimizes for extremism. This design creates an environment in which extremist actors, causes, or groups who feed on outrage can flourish." End quote. So strife spreads virally by algorithm. In the past week, depending on the Twitter feeds and cable channels they follow, Americans have seen either inspiring footage of peaceful protesters standing up in the face of belligerent attempts to dominate, or video of looters smashing storefronts and assaulting shop owners. These conflicting perspectives have left many firm in their conviction of the righteousness of their cause, of the other side's malice, and of the unbridgeability of the divide. Williams goes on, quote, "The proliferation of outrage can also skew our view of the world by giving us the impression that things are much worse than they actually are." In his essay, A Free Man's Worship, Bertrand Russell writes, "Indignation is still a bondage, for it compels our thoughts to be occupied with an evil world. And in the fierceness of desire from which rebellion springs, there is a kind of self-assertion which is necessary for the wise to overcome." That self-assertion, the impulse to advocate even more powerfully for my side, is fueled by the food of information that confirms my rightness. It is strife's servant and must be checked. If that is to happen, especially at a time like this, it's important to believe that the forces that bring us together are ultimately more powerful than those that divide us, and to hope that things may feel worse than they actually are. We have to, if we're to survive, if our fortunes are to bend, as Dr. King said, along the moral arc of the universe toward justice. And the best name for those forces that bring together is the one Empedocles and Dr. King used: love, the feeling and activity that brings us together and reflects the fundamental unity that binds our communities and our humanity. I need an argument here for the skeptics. I'll cite our experience, seniors, of our 4 years together. Despite the pressure, the countless frustrations, the stress, the rivalries and confrontations, the petty exclusions and jealousies, we now belong to each other. You may have felt this keenly in the recent months when the shutdown had so many of us eager to be together, whether at recess, in class, ethics accepted, or in a virtual talent show. This feeling of belonging will grow. In a few years, when you meet classmates who were not in your circle of friends or even friendly with you while you were here, you will warmly greet each other in the acknowledgement of all you shared. I've seen it with former students. It will happen to you. It will happen because our work and cooperation have forged these bonds. Think about the Hancock meals, puzzle hunts, discussions and announcements about anime. Think about Model UN and Common, debate and math club that and all the clubs that various of your classmates have organized. Think of the help your teachers have given you and you've given each other as you prepared for tests or worked on papers. All the work that I thanked the teachers and staff for a few minutes ago were in fact acts of service. I can assure you that your teachers aren't in it for the money. As your teachers will attest, serving others or a community often has little to do with charitable feeling or sweet sentiment. It can be difficult and frustrating. Sometimes you want to wring the neck of the beneficiary of your kindness. But in some mysterious way, you become fond of whatever or whomever you serve. Ask your parents. And one of our jobs is to awaken you to that fact. At Commonwealth, you have become bound to a collection of characters from a range of backgrounds. You have learned to work with, appreciate, and connect with people to whom outside of school you might never have given the time of day, whose circumstances would have kept them on the far side of a divide. Like air, water, earth, and fire, through our shared activity, you have been combined into a marvelous thing called a school. The work of a school is a labor of love. I urge you to take that lesson of building community from here into larger and larger arenas. Like the sheriffs and police officers in Flint, Houston, Camden, Kansas City, Fargo, Santa Cruz, and Ferguson, who joined protesters marching against the violence perpetrated by some of their fellow officers, you need to listen charitably across divides, learn to hear truths that may be unsettling, and be willing to risk your comfort for a larger good. As in recent days, every former president, former defense secretary, and even chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff have done, you need to speak up about the need for common cause and unifying leadership, about respect for the dignity of all, and about the responsibility and limits of power. Though you may be suspicious about some of those who have spoken up, they have spoken, and their words protect the arena in which we can determine a path toward this country's promise, the arena of a politics that can, at its best, rise to common purpose. You need to shift the balance so that strife recedes, so that shared purpose, the sense that we're in this together, supplants the division and demonization. It is important to say again that we need you in the years ahead as scientists. We need you as advocates for justice. We need a generation with the skills and the will to lead our communities and country effectively. As my predecessor, As my predecessor,
You went off mute. You're muted, Bill.
okay. As my predecessor, Judith Keenan, reminded seniors every year, your attendance at Commonwealth renders you privileged. You've been privileged these last 4 years to work closely with remarkable teachers. And with these words today, I hope to encourage you to use all you've learned for the good fight, to supplant strife with love. It's a way of passing all you've received on. It's what we've been working for, and now it's up to you. So go with our best wishes and our love. Thank you.